Bene, ora abbiamo in linea Professor Andrew Sindone, che è stato riconosciuto nell'Australia Day Honours con il titolo di I Am Member of the Order of Australia. Thank you, Andrew, for joining Radio Italia 1 Adelaide, and congratulations again for being awarded the AM on the Australia Day Honours list.
Thanks very much, Antonio, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Actually, just by the way, when did you find out about this? What's the process for receiving it?
So I got an email from the Governor-General about September 2025, and that was inviting me to accept. And then I accepted, and then I got another email a couple of weeks later saying that my acceptance had been ratified. And then you have to keep it quiet, not allowed to say anything, and until Australia Day, which is the 26th of January. But a week before, I got contacted by a few media outlets, including yourself, and I did a few interviews. But you're not allowed to tell anyone until the day, and that's announced in the newspaper and also online on the Governor General's website.
Yes. Okay.
I knew nothing about it. You get contacted by them, but someone has to nominate you, and apparently the process is then that they have to get a few referees, and then the referees have to write references, and then the Governor General's department as well contact other people. They go through your curriculum vitae and resume and find out all about you, and it's quite an involved and rigorous process to make sure that you're the right person.
Yes, I understand there is a lot of testing and a lot of research that goes into it. And, well, your award was mostly around your work and your experience as a cardiologist and in the heart failure field.
I always say to people that this sort of thing is not for doing your job. If it's just for doing your job, that's not right. But it's for doing extra, going above and beyond. So you're right, I'm a cardiologist. I have private practice here in Sydney, in Ryde and in Westmead. And I also work at Concord Hospital, where, as you say, I'm the head of the heart failure unit, the heart failure research program, the heart failure outreach program, the heart failure clinic, and heart failure clinical trials and heart failure rehabilitation. I also run cardiac rehabilitation. And at Ryde Hospital, I'm the head of cardiology. But I do lots of other stuff. And I think that's probably why I was nominated. So I'm the chief advisor to the New South Wales government on heart failure. We've done a lot of initiatives to improve outcomes for people with heart failure. I'm also on 47 advisory boards for different medications to the federal government. I've also helped usher in reimbursement for a very special blood test to help diagnose heart failure. I've also done 57 international multi-center clinical trials, which is to try and experiment whether new medications may help people with cardiovascular disease, and particularly heart failure in my field. I've also written 130 publications, over 150 abstracts, and I do a lot of teaching. I've done now, in the last 33 years as a cardiologist, 1,000 lectures to general practitioners in the last 33 years. And also the patron of a number of charities, including a couple of Italian charities, one called Amici del Cuore, another one called Sant'Antonio di Padova in Freshwater, and also a couple others, one called Heart Support Australia, another one called Hearts for Heart. So I do lots of charity work as well, and also some advocacy for people with intellectual disability and autism. So I do lots of other unusual things. I'm also bringing new technology to Australia with a wearable patch which can monitor the heart continuously for at least 7 days without having to put all these dots all over your chest, and it monitors the heart live. So these are a whole lot of other things that I'm doing on the side that mostly you don't get paid for, but to try and help people with cardiovascular disease and heart failure, because it's such an important thing. 1 in 12 Australian will die from a cardiovascular illness in the next 5 years, and adults over the age of 75. And it kills about 1 every 10 minutes. Someone dies of cardiovascular disease in Australia. So it's the number 1 killer. Cancer gets all the glamour, but cardiac disease is still the number 1 killer. So we know a lot. There's a lot we can do to prevent it, and there's a lot we can do to treat it. Heart failure is where I specialize, and if I can talk about that, that's really important because people don't understand. It's not a blockage of the artery, it's where the heart is weak or damaged and can't send enough blood around the body, so that people feel tired and weak and unwell.
So yes, I was going to ask you, use the word heart failure. What does heart failure mean?
Yeah. So heart attack is where little tiny arteries around the heart block, and
Mm.
that can cause damage to the heart muscle. And if you have damage to the heart muscle, then you can end up with heart failure. Other causes of heart failure is maybe a virus or too much alcohol, certain medications. There's inherited conditions, these cardiomyopathies that people can get, or leaking heart valves, which damage the heart muscle. All those things can lead to this syndrome of heart failure, where people become short of breath, walking along, swelling in the legs, tired, loss of appetite, unable to do the things they used to be able to do. And it's really important because it makes you feel bad, and it has a high risk of ending up in hospital, and it can also kill you. Heart failure has a worse prognosis than most cancers. So at 55 years, 50% of people have died. So it's common. About 580,000 people in Australia have heart failure. So whether either the heart is weak, not able to pump out enough blood, or the heart becomes stiff, so it can't fill up properly. There's less blood around the body. So as I said earlier, I've been a cardiologist for 33 years. When I first started in cardiology, you told someone they had heart failure, that's it, you're going to die. Nothing you can do. And so when I got into this area, we did lots and lots of work. I did a PhD in this area, and I went overseas and did a fellowship at Harvard University, trying to get new treatments and better manage these people. And now we have really good treatments, which if you compare even 2013 to now, 2026, you get someone diagnosed with heart failure, you put them on 2013 treatment, compared to now, we can buy an extra about 8.5 years of life for
Oh,
someone who's diagnosed with heart failure at age 55. So we can make a really big difference with our medications. But one of the big issues that people are not being diagnosed, or they're not being treated properly, or they're not taking their medications. And so it's really important that, and that's what I've been crusading for a long time, trying to improve access and equity to the medications we use, because there are big differences in people who live in rural Australia compared to people who live in big cities. And also there are big differences according to people who are Indigenous, and also people like us from culturally and linguistically diverse places where they don't have the literacy, the health literacy, to be able to navigate their way through this really complicated health system. And you need a advocate or a champion to be able to get the patient onto the right treatment, because it really can make a difference.
interesting. You mentioned people not taking medications. When I worked in the area of technology commercialization, I went to some medical talks, and sometimes that was the first thing that came up. We know what makes people healthier or live longer, but they don't follow. So maybe it's a question of literacy, maybe it's a question of communication and empathy and understanding how people behave. Does is there
Yeah,
a matter of sort of educating
there's
the
a lot
medical
to that.
practitioners?
There's a lot to unpack there from what you just said. So the first thing to think about is that people love taking vitamins, but they don't like taking medications. And I think that's just a selling point. But when I see someone who's got heart failure, I say, look, this is a serious condition. We can make a difference. You've got to take your tablets. If you don't take your tablets, you're not going to get better. And it's really important because, as I said earlier, if you are diagnosed with heart failure in hospital and we send you home, at 30 days, there is a 23% chance you'll be back in hospital. That's almost 1 in 4 people will be back in hospital. And the most common reason for people coming back to hospital is not taking their tablets. So we have things that can make a difference, but if people don't take them, they don't work. Other things that can upset people is they get an infection, like a chest infection or a urinary infection or infection under the skin, or they have bleeding, or their heart goes into abnormal rhythm, or they get a new blockage in their arteries, or they're deficient in iron, or they take medications that upset the heart. So in 2001, we set up an initiative in New South Wales where every patient who has heart failure is seen by a nurse in hospital, and then they're followed up within a week at home, and then we get a weekly phone call for 4 weeks. That was actually first started in Adelaide by someone called Simon Stewart, who was actually a nurse who set up these programs there, and they showed that it helped. And most places around Australia now have a program, something like that, using the resources and staff that are available to try and see the patients in hospital and at home, and try and make sure they're taking the tablets, make sure they've got an appointment to see their GP, an appointment to their specialist, and organise if they need Meals on Wheels or home help, because it's not all rocket science. But as I say, if people don't take the tablets, they don't get better. So we've got lots of weapons. It's a matter of being able to do it. But we're still not there. We haven't got everything. That's why we're doing more and more research to try and help people with this really terrible condition.
So basic understanding, so heart failure is the weakening of the muscle that doesn't operate properly. And I guess that's why I used to wonder why people who have heart problems say they can't walk anymore. And I guess it's because the leg muscles are so big and they need a lot of oxygen.
Yeah, so the heart is the engine which drives the whole car. If the engine doesn't work, the car won't work. So you need blood, oxygen, which is carried in the blood, to go to all the parts of the body. So you're quite right. The muscles need lots of oxygen and blood, but yeah, so does the brain. So people can not have a brain fog, not be able to think clearly, can't concentrate, can't do things they used to be able to do. They don't sleep well. Less blood goes to the stomach, so you lose your appetite. Less blood to the bowels, constipation. Less blood to the skin, cold hands, cold feet. Less blood to the skin, so you get, your hair on your skin doesn't grow so fast, and the sexual organs get less blood, so those things don't work so well, particularly in men. So these are all parts of the syndrome where the heart is not sending enough blood around the body. And what we're trying to do is reverse a lot of that. So open the blood vessels around the body so the heart can send the blood around more easily, and also help the heart pump more strongly, more slowly, more efficiently. So these are all part of our tricks of the trade. And as I said, I've been on a crusade to try and improve people's compliance with medications. That means taking the tablets, but also persistence, because we know that 1 year people just start stopping. They cease the medications, and we have to explain this is a chronic illness, like chronic lung disease, like diabetes, where you have to take the medications long term. But if you do, you can make a big difference. And I see the people, my patients, frequently, and try and reinforce on them that this is so important. But we follow them up. So we do ultrasound of the heart. That's one of our key investigations. And the ultrasound of the heart can see how the heart is pumping. And then with that, we can tell, look, your heart's getting stronger, or your valves are leaking less, or the pressure in your lungs is coming down. They're all good things. And that's really important to be able to explain to people, you are getting better, you are responding, because we have ways of predicting, the future, and predicting whether they're going to stay well or whether they're going downhill. Everybody dies, but the idea is to die later with better health along the way. In New South Wales, or in fact in Australia now, life expectancy for a man is 81 and for a woman is 83. Women live longer than men by 2 years, despite the fact they get every illness more than men, except heart disease. Men get heart disease more than women, and that's why we live 2 years less than women. So it's important that we try and get someone to achieve their life expectancy and beyond. And it's not just about me, about the medications. It's about people looking after themselves. Regular exercise, at least 30 minutes of moderate intensity exercise, at least 5 times a week. Definitely not smoking. Alcohol minimal, maybe 1 or 2 drinks a week at most. And trying not to be overweight and getting to a healthy weight range, and getting your blood pressure perfect, getting your cholesterol perfect. All those things can make people live longer. We've got those weapons at our disposal. Seeing your doctor, because one of the reasons that we've had people living longer is I hate to say this, cardiologists. People are having checkups for their blood pressure and cholesterol. We're diagnosing things earlier, opening the arteries with stents or bypass operations, and we're putting in these defibrillators, these special pacemakers, which can stop the heart from going to rhythm, which causes sudden death. And all these things mean people are living longer, and they're living with better health, but they are taking medications and they're getting older, and other things happen. So it's all a matter of looking after yourself, seeing your doctor regularly, because we do have a lot of preventive things we can do, and following the prevention guidelines. There's a lot of stuff there with prevention, like having vaccinations. I've been doing a lot of work on this over the last few years. We know that influenza vaccination reduces cardiovascular events, heart attacks and strokes. If you get influenza, in the first week, your risk of heart attack or stroke goes up 6 times. And even out to a month, it's higher. And that applies also to that RSV, respiratory syncytial virus, which we now have a vaccine for as well, also to COVID-19 and to pneumonia. And more recently, they're believing that the shingles infection with the burning on the skin, walk with your Sant'Antonio, that's appropriate to you, using your name Antonio, that shingles infection can also, all those infections can increase the risk of a heart attack or a stroke within the first week of having those infections. And then it persists for about a month and then it goes down again. So if you can have a vaccination to prevent those things, that can make a big difference too.
Interesting. My mother had shingles a couple of years ago, and she never accused any pain. And I often wondered whether it's because it was the dementia that had started that had blocked off the right part of the brain. But that never happened. But in terms, actually, a little bit of trivia, in terms of things that people can do to prevent or help with heart failure, I do some yoga, and I see a lot of emphasis being put on breathing and slowing down the breath. And also these funny poses of people being upside down, shoulder stands or stuff like that. Does it really help to put your feet up, for example?
Um, so there's lots of exercise actually in my PhD 35 years ago. We did a lot of work on exercise training in people with weakened or damaged heart muscles. And we did really intensive testing, putting tubes through the neck down to the heart and measuring the heart. And what we found was that exercise doesn't change the heart, but it makes a big difference to how the body copes with the fact the heart is not perfect. And we looked at resistance exercise, light weights. We also looked at aerobic exercise, so the treadmill and exercise bike, and also respiratory muscle training. And so what you're describing, yoga, is there's some resistance because people take these poses, as you say. There's also a lot of control of the breathing with yoga and also with Tai Chi. There's been quite a bit of work recently looking at Tai Chi with holding poses, doing breathing exercises, working on the core. And so yoga and Tai Chi are probably quite helpful in people who can't do resistance, big exercise or get on the exercise bike, but it can make a difference. And there's a group in America, an Italian lady, Donna Mancini, and she showed that just deep breathing exercises can also help. They got people to blow against the tube. They got people to hold their breath in for a long time, breathe out and hold it. And also work on the muscles that control breathing in the neck and the chest. So those breathing exercises you mentioned and the core strengthening exercises that yoga and Tai Chi work on, they actually can be helpful. The other thing that yoga is quite good for is mindfulness and meditation. And there's a lot we don't understand about how the brain controls all this stuff. And so meditation can be helpful. I'm a big believer in prayer. And so that can also make a difference.
Okay, no, don't get me started on the vagus nerve. Okay, I'm discovering all sorts of interesting things there. So, you mentioned Amici del Cuore. What is that? What do you do with Amici del Cuore?
That's a charity I started about 25, probably 30 years ago now, with a lovely fellow who unfortunately since passed away. He's actually from Adelaide again, and his name was Mr. Famolaro, Antonio Famolaro, and what he was trying to do was get a group of Italian people together who had had a cardiac event, whether it be a bypass operation or a stent or a heart attack, or a pacemaker or atrial fibrillation. And we got together and we used to have a reunion about once every 1 or 2 months. And we'd get together and I'd give a talk about a particular aspect of the heart. There'd be lots of questions and answers about how the heart was working. It was nice social. We'd have a cup of coffee and some cakes. And they also did a lot of fundraising where they'd have raffles or a picnic day or charity events where they had a store at some of the markets and they'd sell things. And the money that they raised would go to help fund cardiovascular research and also programs to help our area. So where I work at Concord Hospital has a very large Italian community around it, around Five Dock, Leichhardt, Haverfield, Concord. So there's a lot of Italians from all in that area. And so we're trying to help the community because, as we said earlier, people who don't speak English can get left behind. And so increasing their awareness and their knowledge is important. We had some Italian doctors come as well to talk in Italian to get people more familiar with what's going on because the nonnas and the nonnos who came to Australia all those years ago are now getting older and they're not doing so well. So English is my first language. I was born in Australia, but I do about 4 or 5 consultations a day in Italian. And my Italian patients really are very grateful that I can talk to them Italian. My Italian's not as good as my English. One of my patients said it's more like kitchen Italian, but it's important that you make people feel comfortable and you explain things to them in a way they can understand about the importance of the heart. Because, as I said earlier, cancer gets all the glamour, but cardiovascular disease is still the biggest killer in Australia, and there are things we can do to prevent cardiovascular disease. Like I said, with blood pressure, cholesterol, cigarettes, and exercise, and helping control diabetes, they can really make a difference. We've gone a long way in the last 35 years that I've been involved, 40 years as a doctor, but there's still a lot more to do. But as I said, the biggest goal at the moment is getting people to take their medications. And my jobs are three: make people feel better, make them live longer, and keep them out of hospital. They're my three jobs.
Yes, actually, another doctor that I spoke to a few years ago who spoke Italian was Richard Di Natale, and he'd had a long history of speaking to his patients in Italian, and it was very interesting. And actually, he said what led him to join the Greens in politics was looking at the social determinants of health and how you can with a better environment, have people live better lives. Allora, continuiamo in italiano. Sindone, di dove viene questo nome?
La mia famiglia viene di Sicilia, mio padre viene di Milazzo, provincia Messina, e mia madre di Lisleoli di Stromboli, però mia madre è venuta in Australia a 10 anni con la sua famiglia, con i genitori, e mio padre è venuto in Australia solo a 15 anni, e i miei genitori hanno
15.
comprato... sì, sì, solo. Ha abitato in boarding house con altri ragazzi italiani in Leichhardt, ha fatto la vita dura, ha lavorato in fabbrica, 3 lavori una volta, e dopo quando ha fatto abbastanza soldi, ha preso un appartamento e alla fine ha sposato con la mia madre, contratto, e ha fatto 3 bambini, mio fratello Mario, mia sorella Silvana, e ha fatto una vita bella qui in Australia. È sposato nel 1960. Mia madre è arrivata in 48, mio padre in 51. Mio nonno, infatti, la madre di mia madre, il padre di mia madre, è venuto in Australia nel 1923. È stato qui per molto tempo, c'era un fruit shop, e dopo è ritornato in Italia, sposato, e ha detto alla sua moglie: io ritorno in Australia, quando c'è abbastanza soldi ti richiamo in Australia. È ritornato in Australia, però è arrivato dalla guerra, e con la guerra il governo australiano ha mandato lui in galera perché è italiano, in internment camp, è rimasto lì fino l'Italia ha cambiato con gli americani invece dei tedeschi, è mandato fuori, però dopo di quello ha perso tutti i soldi del suo negozio di frutta, ha cominciato di nuovo. Allora, quando mia madre è arrivata in Australia nel 48, 1948, suo padre è stato qui per molto tempo e non ho incontrato il padre per 10 anni. Per 10 anni non mai ho visto il padre. Allora, quelle sono le cose che succedono, però non è una storia unica, succede spesso. Mio padre ha fatto una vita dura, però tutti e due hanno detto: noi vuoi una vita dei nostri figli che è migliore della nostra. E la cosa che ha detto la più importante è educazione. Devo lavorare alla scuola, devo studiare. Mio fratello Mario è un avvocato, barrister, e mia sorella Silvana impara l'inglese all'università immigranti. E adesso i nostri figli sono tutti laureati all'università anche. E il mio genitore adesso è partito, però io spero che i nostri genitori sono orgogliosi che noi abbiamo fatto tutto questo studio e ho fatto avanzamento perché il mio cuore sono ancora italiano. Io dico che io sono italiano fabbricato in Australia, proprio italiano. E allora, quando l'Italia gioca in calcio, sempre dico Forza Italia.
Sì, sì. Beh, anche mio nonno, papà di mamma, è stato a Loveday durante la guerra. Um,
Sì, sì.
sì.
E
E,
c'è le storie così.
sì, sì, sì. E allora, Sinde, tu siete stati in Italia?
Sì, spesso, spesso. Non ho abitato lì, però è andato in 1967 con la nave, con l'Achille Lauro.
Mm.
Molte persone la conoscono perché Achille Lauro è ritornato con Angelina Lauro. A quel tempo era 33 giorni arrivare in Italia. perché non c'era l'aereo come adesso, e ha messo la macchina, in Holden, sulla macchina, è andato in Italia, ha fatto una gita in Italia per 6 mesi con la
Mm.
macchina, ha visto tutti i parenti e dopo è ritornato spesso volte. Mia moglie è anche italiana, anche dottoressa, dottore di famiglia, lei viene di Basilicata, provincia di Potenza, e allora per noi ho comprato l'ospedale, però infatti mia sorella non parla l'inglese, allora è contenta che io poi parlare in italiano.
Ok,
E, il mio cuore è ancora in Italia.
sì, ok, la moglie della Virginia della Basilicata. Adesso,
Mhm.
let's go back to the heart failure stuff again. You've been writing, amongst other things, guidelines for heart failure.
Yeah.
And
So,
one even, I saw Carmine De Pasquale was one of your co-authors, at least in the
right.
last
So
edition.
I know Carmina very well. I've written the Australian Guidelines for Management of Heart Failure as a co-author. I'm also a co-author of the Asia Pacific Guidelines for the Management of Heart Failure. And in 2025, we wrote the World Guidelines for the Management of Heart Failure. I was also a co-author on those. And so with the Australian guidelines, Carmina Di Pasquale and myself, I was second author, he was third author. So I've known him for 20 years. Lovely guy. I understand you work with his dad
Yep.
there in Adelaide. And Carmina, yeah, he's a really good cardiologist there in Adelaide. And as you say, we're bringing many papers together because he's also a heart failure specialist in Adelaide at Flinders University. And he does outreach clinics out in the Riverland, he keeps telling me, to try and spread the word. But I always say to people that I can see one patient and make a difference to one patient. But if I do teaching, I can teach a whole lot of doctors and they can look after a whole lot more patients. So it's like that story they say, give someone a piece of fish, have a meal. You give them a fishing line and a hook, they eat forever. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to disseminate all the things that are happening because there's so much happening in the world of medicine, the world of cardiology and heart failure that it's important. So as I said, I've done 1,000 lectures to general practitioners in the last 33 years and trying to make a difference to people with cardiovascular disease. And by teaching GPs and other cardiologists, like a lot of that we can hopefully improve outcomes. It means I get sent more patients, but I run a heart failure clinic at Concord Hospital where I have five heart failure specialists working for me, and we can see a lot of patients, 25, 30 patients in an afternoon on a Friday. So I'm really trying my best to make a difference in the world. So maybe when I die, someone will say, oh, he was all right. He made a difference.
Okay, you mentioned different types of different versions of guidelines. Is there much difference between them?
That's a good question. In fact, there's a lot of controversy there because Australia is a developed country. And we're really lucky. We have access to a lot of medications, and we also have pretty good health cover, so reimbursement for medications from the government, access to testing, and also access to treatments like stents and bypasses and defibrillators and electrical procedures, things like that. But there are some medications that are not available in Australia, some treatments which are still not approved or not paid for by the government. So we're different. We're not Americans. We don't want to be Americans. And so we have to tailor all the guidance according to what's available, what's not available, and also according to what's affordable. But in the Asia Pacific guidelines, it's different again because unfortunately there are some countries in Asia where funding is not very good. We are the lower socioeconomic countries where they don't have access to many of the medications we have. They don't have access to heart surgery or stenting, and that means that you can't recommend a treatment or a medication that's not available, and so you have to be more aware of that and more understanding. But it's not in the guidelines for Thailand or the guidelines for Korea. It's all of Asia. So you have to be very careful the way you word it. So if available, or if sustainable, or if affordable, and say we recommend this medication, but if it's not available, we suggest this one can be almost as good if that's all you have, but it's certainly better than nothing. So that's an important thing. And talking about equity and access to medications when um, uh, people don't necessarily have those. And we know that life expectancy in the poorer countries is not as good as in the richer countries. But I think Australia's probably hit the sweet spot. In America, it's gone too far the other way, where it's all about making money from healthcare. And healthcare shouldn't be about making a profit. Healthcare should be about delivering health and services to people. So Australia tries very hard to do that. In the United Kingdom, they try even harder. But over there, it's gone too far where there's long waiting lists and there's no private system. And so life expectancy in UK is a little less than Australia by a year or two. In America, it's a little less as well because you can get wheeled into hospital, but if you don't have insurance, you get wheeled out again. And also, there's other problems in America with crime and drugs and things like that. So I think we're doing pretty well in Australia. There's room to move, but and I'm sure all your listeners will tell you Australia's a good place to live.
Yes, indeed. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Sindone. By the way, how do they call you in the hospital? Sindone or Sindone?
Sindone.
Sindone, okay. And
you didn't want to talk about the Shroud of Turin?
That's right, yes. Well, thank you again. Congratulations again. And
thank you.
I guess, which hospital is that in the background that we see?
That's Concord Hospital in the background. So I've worked there for 37 years, where I met my wife in the emergency department. So it's dear to my heart, if you pardon the pun. But I'm a professor there.
And she said your Italian wasn't good enough.
She thought that my English was better. Is probably the best way to put it. What did you think of my Italian? It wasn't too bad?
No, it was brilliant. I understood everything and you got the concepts across. That's what communication is about. Okay, well, thank you very much.
It's really nice to meet you. And if you do ever come through Sydney and want to catch up for a cafe or a nice meal, you're always welcome. You've got my mobile, I think, haven't you?
Yes, thank you.
Good.